Drew Harris. I'm a fractional CTO. I help SaaS companies grow and scale from the product and engineering standpoint. I ran my own SaaS business for a number of years, and I scaled it. I've worked in several other SaaS companies, and I'm here today with Diane. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Drew. Diane Gordon, I'm a fractional chief customer officer. Been working in SaaS for the last 30 years or so, building and scaling post-sales organizations for startups all the way to public companies, where post-sales is implementation or onboarding, used interchangeably, customer success, which is the post-onboarding care to drive adoption and value, customer support, and account management. So I'm eager to talk with Drew today about leadership.
All right. So yes, that is our topic. So we're going to talk about leadership. And I thought we'd get started today by talking just back and forth about what a good leader looks like, particularly in the SaaS space. So what I've seen in regards to really good leaders in the product and engineering side anyhow, is the leaders who empower their people and believe in the team. I think that that's like the number one thing. So I'm sure Diane has some of her own thoughts. A lot of people think, if you're a product and engineering person in a SaaS company, technology is the first and foremost. And I beg to differ. I say that putting your people first is first and foremost. So
yeah, I would agree 100% with that. I think the most, well, not maybe the most, but a critical thing for a leader is to help to define and help their team understand how they're being measured, how the team is being measured. What are the metrics that they are going to use to, and I'm talking less about individual performance now, and how is the team going to be judged as, being successful, not being successful? What are those metrics? And I'm always surprised by either the leader not knowing those or putting those in place, and then when they do, not sharing those with the team. And so there's nothing like having a team understand why you're asking them to do specific things. And so if you say, hey, listen, one of the things we're being measured on is frequency of contact with the decision maker, for example. All right, well, that would explain why you're all over me to be in touch with the decision maker. And so clarity of metrics that are shared with the team, and then, to your point, enabling the team to hit those metrics by, letting them do their jobs, giving the tools they need, but not stepping in and doing the jobs for them.
Yeah, that's a big one. Empowering the teams. The metrics is huge in my space too, with the product and engineering side. I've seen that happen really well in some situations where the vision for the company, the values of the company, the goals for the company, the expectations, those are very, very clear and communicated all the way down. And I think that all the way down is very important, because what I see in larger organizations is sort of the telephone game.
Yep.
For those of you who haven't heard of that scenario, there's a game where people sit in a circle, and the first person will whisper a phrase to the second person, and it goes around the circle until it gets back to the first person. And oftentimes when it gets back to the first person, it's totally different. Right. So that's the principle here that we're talking about. And it's very important to sync and to communicate what that vision is, whether it's the product vision or the customer vision or the revenue vision. Those are all very important things to a company, and for everybody in that circle, which is your company, to make sure that they understand and that the message is clear and it's not getting distorted along the way.
It's a great point. I'm working with a customer right now who, it's a pretty small startup, but what they decided is that they needed to define at the company level how they were going to measure success. So those are obvious things like, do we hit our sales targets? How's our gross retention? What's our margin look like? But then, those things are so high level as to be almost useless to somebody, in an engineering role or a CSM or a support person. So then the question was, all right, well, as the leader of post sales, as the leader of, say, the support organization, what are the things I'm going to measure that would be leading indicators for those higher level metrics? So if we want our gross retention to be, 95%, well, probably my support metrics need to look like the following. And so what they did, and I worked with them on this, is to create that framework of cascading metrics. So, you have a person who's writing code who can understand how what he or she is doing actually cascades back up to help the company hit its metrics. And so now that this framework exists, the company's pulling it out, each leader is measuring to it. And at quarterly company meetings, we're looking across the board to see, things that are green or red down in the weeds, how those impact, things being green or red up at the top. And so, whether you use a formal framework like OKRs or anything like that, really helping teams understand in terms that make sense to them, what, like it's telling an engineer that you want to hit a GRR target, it's like, even if they understand what that is, it doesn't, but if you get that to a place where you go, and for us, what that means is, reducing our, bugs per release by this amount, right?
Right.
You have to sort of really connect the dots for people and make sure that they understand that. Otherwise, it's too much. It's too ivory tower for most people to understand, right, in their day-to-day job.
For sure. And to that point, if we go back to the telephone game analogy, if the first person in that circle is the CEO, the CEO is going to speak differently than the engineer or the CSM at the end of the circle. And they're gonna view things in different light. They're gonna have different terminology. It's almost as if they're speaking different languages.
Really, it really is. You say, oh, we want our, top line margin to be whatever, and you've got a support person going, yay, like I'm happy to support that. I don't know what that means. And so I think doing that translation and having people feel like they understand and can impact the metrics. So, involve them in defining them. If you say, well, we want, we're going to identify a metric, they're kind of like, there's no way I can impact that metric, then it's probably the wrong one. So I keep coming back to that. And I'm always fascinated when I start working with companies, when I talk to a CS leader or the people working for them, post-sales leader, how are you measuring your team? And they almost never actually have those metrics defined. It doesn't mean that they're not working hard and doing a good job, but I think it's kind of amazing to me that, they need to really have those. They can align with their team on what good looks like.
Right. That's so true. That's so true. And to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, I had a thought occur as we were discussing this, about how people are so different in regards to how they perceive things, how they communicate things, and just really how they see the world. And that diversity in the workspace is important if you optimize it. If I've seen really good leaders that really know how to get other people's buy-in, to get other people's opinions, to have other people from different perspectives join in the conversation. And like you said, be a part of the process and setting the goals, setting the KPIs, setting the OKRs, whatever the measurements are, whatever the metrics are, in ways that people within the organization understands. And, that diversity is powerful, where you really get to optimize on people's talents and passions. And I've seen great leaders who can really do a great job of that. They recognize that in their people and they capitalize on it.
Yeah. So, a sort of operational way to think about that is, if the company's reasonably well organized, it's the middle of Q2 or late Q2, and we're starting to think about Q3 objectives. You define those company ones, even in draft form, you share them out to the teams, and the team leads, right? Now your heads of support, your heads of engineering can begin brainstorming with their teams and involve them in the process of defining, if our company objectives are going to look something like this, even though they're not final. What do you think our metrics should be? How should we? And so, they're not just handed them as a fait accompli, once everything's in place, they get to participate in the definition of those things. And to your point, that's where you get the engineer going, that's not meaningful to me. I don't, and like, if you want to keep a customer, the way how I'm thinking about that is this. And so A, you get the diversity in there, and B, people feel a lot more bought in when they've had a say, even if their comments didn't make it into the final thing. And it does it takes a little bit of organization, because a lot of companies, when they get ready to define these things, are already in the quarter. Right. Oh my God, it's already the quarter. What are we trying to accomplish? And so, to the extent that you can, and then it's too late to involve people. You just gotta establish it. And that's where I think you run into the things you're talking about, which is, okay, leadership said we cared about going to the moon, and I'm over here answering support tickets. I don't get how those are connected.
Right.
So I think it's important to have some sort of a calendar that you follow, that you sort of force the thinking and the brainstorming to happen before you need the final, so that you can involve the organizations.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So it sounds like we're identifying another attribute of key leadership, and that's the organization and the scheduling of things. Because if it's too chaotic and it's too just in time, knee-jerk sort of reaction, then your people, who we've talked about are the most important thing in your organization, they're going to respond in the same way. And, a lot of the metrics that we look at in our industries are trailing indicators. So, when you make a change, it's going to take a little while for that to come in through the data and to see the results of that change, because there's a lot of trailing indicators.
Yeah. One of the things I think you can say about people in general, people are generally, well, I'll say this, people are generally good at things they enjoy and less good at things they don't enjoy. And my analogy for this personally is, like, I'm a terrible cook. I also don't enjoy cooking. I don't know which came first. But I think if you really like something, you're gonna tend to do it first. You're gonna be better at it. If you don't, it's kind of like, oh, I hate doing that. Then you're gonna avoid it. And so what happens is you end up with a leader who, let's say, they're not really strong operationally. They're a great visionary leader. They're great in leading a team. But the whole, like, okay, I got to create a spreadsheet with OKRs and schedule meetings to get input and all that, keep the trains running on time. That's like, they'll do it, but they don't really like it. And so, and this is true, like almost every leader you could look at and go, they're either, operationally really strong or soft skills really strong. And every so often you get somebody who's both, which is great. But I think the biggest thing I notice is that if you're not operationally strong, and that doesn't mean it doesn't need to be done. So either you admit that and you find a way to have somebody else do that work, or you just buckle down and do it. And I think too often it's like, that stuff falls to the wayside because it's not valued as a part of leadership. And so it's interesting. I work with a nonprofit right now. I'm chair of the board for a nonprofit, and we have an executive director. It's an arts organization, and he's an artist. He's extremely talented. He's wildly accomplished, and he hates the idea of, like, using a computer to do anything. And so we have this challenge, right? He's a great visionary leader, but we have things that aren't getting done, like the building needs repairs and, things like that.
Right.
And so it's a case where, we need to partner him with somebody who does have those skills. And so that's what I would also say about, know yourself as a leader, and know that if, you're one or the other, do the work to shore yourself up on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes to that comment I made earlier about talent and passion. And, you really have to, as a leader, understand yourself and really understand your growth areas where you're not passionate and you're not talented, just as well as you need to understand the things that you're really darn good at.
Right.
And really, this is the thing that I help organizations with more than anything else, is to really capitalize on that. And to get those pieces to fit together, get those people to fit together. Because if you get people to work together, they can accomplish all sorts of things, especially if they're working in their passions.
That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah, and very often as a leader, if you know that, hey, this is something I don't love to do, my guess is there's someone on their team that does want to do that, and it'll be a growth opportunity. So why not say, hey, hey, Joe, I'm really bad at this like OKR framework stuff. Do you interested in doing that? So, I would love to see that happen more than, it sort of just becomes a known thing that leader just never does it.
Sure.
And because it really, to your point, like it impacts the performance of the team below the leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you've got a leader who understands themselves really well, and they're working with other leaders who understand themselves really well, and they're all working on their passions, and then they all have teams that understand themselves really well, and they're all working on their passions, and they're working together, you've got a very diverse group of people that are all very passionate about what they do. They're very engaged, and they're accomplishing amazing results with a small crew. So,
But I would also say, and I don't know if you and I talked about this earlier, but, I would also say that, every job has a part of it that you don't like. It's just, I remember saying that to my dad when I first got out of college. I was in my first job. I said, oh, Dad, I love my job, but I have to do this one thing. And he's like, that's why we call it work, honey. So, I also I think as a good leader recognizes that, there's going to be parts of your job that you don't love, but you still have to do.
Yes.
Just because you don't like it, it's not an excuse to not do it. And, and then it's your call as an individual to decide, well, if that wedge, of the pie of things that you do, if that one slice of things you don't like gets too big, you're probably in the wrong job. Yeah. But, if, for example, you have to define KRs and you hate that, it's still part of your job. You have to find a way to get it done.
Right. Right. Is there a percentage of that pie that you would say in your experience that, you really need to optimize yourself for this percentage? And if you're doing X percentage of stuff that you hate, you're in the wrong job?
Well, I've always thought, if you have the privilege of choosing what you do for a living, not everybody does, right?
Sure.
So I want to be careful here, because if you don't, and you hate 90% of your job, but it's all you can do for some reason, then there you go. But I think if you have the privilege of doing that, it's a personal choice. I mean, I would say it probably changes as you age. When you're earlier in your career, you probably put up with more stuff you don't like to get ahead. And then the older you get, the later you are. Right now for me, it's about, if that wedge gets to more than 20%, I need to change something up. But
Yeah.
for some people, it might be their tolerance level might be lower. But my point is that work, if one of the things I noticed is that the more senior I got in the corporate world, the bigger that wedge got. For me personally, going to things like executive meetings, strategic offsites, board meetings, like a lot of people love that stuff. I do not. And that as the more and more senior I got, the more and more my job became those things, and versus doing the actual work. And so you have to sort of test that for yourself as a leader. And if you're finding that, a lot of people do this, right? They trade, and we talked about this earlier, that they're like, well, I should be getting this more and more senior title, even if I'm really unhappy in my job.
Yeah.
That's just not true.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that if you don't mind, I'm going to change gears just a little bit here and go with what you're talking about. And we talked previously about the Peter principle, and maybe not everybody's heard of that. There's a book, you can look it up. It's called the Peter Principle. And essentially at its core, it talks about people being promoted to their level of incompetence. And Diane and I have both seen that in our tenure in corporate environments. And it happens more often than I would like, that I'm comfortable with. And I think that part of that, and this is just my opinion, is a result of people just thinking they got to continue to move up the ladder and doing things that they're uncomfortable with and or not good at.
Right.
And they put themselves in a position where they're incompetent at their job. But moving backwards down the ladder is not something that it rarely happens. I'll say it that way.
Right. Yeah, and to get back to my thing of like, if you don't like something, you're not going to be good at it. I mean, very often people choose management roles, for example, because they think they should, right?
Mhm.
When you ask somebody, who's in a role and you go, do you really like this? And they'll be like, not really, I really don't like it, but I thought I should do it. And again, once again,
Right.
if you don't like it, you're probably not going to be awesome at it. So I think, making sure and getting people to be honest with themselves. When I often talk to people, we're early in their careers, like, oh, I really want to get into management. I'm like, do you though? Like,
Yeah.
let's really talk about, and I'm not trying to change your mind. Maybe you really do, but
Mhm.
just tell me what you're envisioning when you picture that. And, so you might, take an engineer, for example, who loves writing code, loves nothing more than writing code. Well, guess what? I mean, at some point, you're a manager, you're not going to be doing that anymore. So you're going to not do the thing you love. Or you get a support person who's like, I want to lead a team. Well, guess what? You're not going to do support tickets anymore. And you really love that. So I
Right.
think just being able to have these really candid conversations with people, and it's almost a relief sometimes when they go, oh God, you're right. I really, really but then, in fairness, like you have to make sure you have to give them a way to make the same amount of money some other way and to feel the same level of prestige. And
Absolutely.
that's tricky in our business society. We're not very good at that.
That's true. That's true. I was talking with an engineer just yesterday, and he was someone who worked with me in the past, and he was asking me, "So, Drew, what do I need to do to get into management?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "Well, hang on. Let's talk about management, and let's talk about you. And is that right for you?" And he's
Mhm.
like, "Well, I really don't know." And well, then you probably need to figure that out. He's like, well, what else am I going to do?
Right.
Well, there's other options. Let's talk about those. Do some investigation, do some soul searching. Um, he was worried because back to the technical comment I made earlier, he was worried that because he's not as technical as some of his peers,
Okay.
that he doesn't have the longevity as an engineer and he should just go on into management. I'm
Mhm.
like, but there's other roles that really optimize your soft skills, that optimize your other skills, your organization skills that you can work into. And he was just like, well, I didn't even realize that. I thought that there was like this straight path and that's all there was.
Right. Or, I mean, not that I would encourage him to leave the company, but there's engineering roles where he would be, where his skills would be,
Mm-hmm.
most advanced, maybe not at that company, maybe in a different group. So, right. And I do think that, I mean, we're working against, hundreds, maybe thousands of years of societal expectations, right? Which is, oh, the more senior your title, the more people you have working for you, the more successful you are. And, definitely, that's the norm. And so I think, uh, uh, first of all, you need to work with people to get them to be aware that there's other options, and then be okay with the idea of like your call. If you want to do a job that makes you mostly unhappy, go for it. But
Right.
like I said, not everybody has the privilege to choose. Um, but boy, the number of times I've talked to people that are first time managers are like, you know what, I don't really like this. I
Yeah.
don't like to go back to not having to worry about other people. And I think the more self-aware a manager can get their team to be, and the more comfortable you can get people having that conversation. Doesn't mean you're going to take them out of their management role immediately, but it's like, okay, to
Yeah.
not, we just don't need that many leaders, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is the further you progress up that leadership ladder, the fewer positions that there are. I had a friend who I worked with in engineering, and he was really frustrated one time and venting to me. He was like, not everybody can be a VP, you know, there's just not that many spots.
that's right.
And so that makes a lot of sense.
You hear about these companies are like, banks, everyone's a VP. Like, what does that even mean at some point?
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's about, you know, people being able to be honest with themselves, being given other paths that
Mhm.
make sense. And then, And then if they do decide, oh yeah, I want to give this management thing a go, understanding that they may not have the full range of skills required, but they are able to ask for help to get, the ones that they don't like. I love the idea of leading people, but I hate the idea of creating a budget. Okay, well, how are you going to do both of those then, right? And be good at it.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen one tactic work very well within a lot of organizations that I've worked with, and that help them kind of capitalize on this concept that we're talking about, and that's having very clear career ladders in place that have, there's a career ladder for this, there's a career ladder for that. There's multiple options, and it's not just one path that you're limited to. You can move between, and that's okay. But then back to the expectations conversation, a good career ladder has the roles, the levels, and all of the expectations spelled out in words, not just like scores, like leading technically 1 to 10. And if you're a 10, then you're this level. No, you need to define what technical leadership looks like at each of those levels. And, having that really helps on all sorts of levels with leadership, because it helps you as a leader understand your team and work together to set the goals. If you use the career ladder correctly, you can use it as a performance management tool every step along the way throughout the entire year. Not just, a lot of times I talk to managers and they're hesitant. The thing that they like the least about management is doing performance reviews at the end of the year. And I think, well, if you had a good career ladder and you had regular conversations about it, then it's part of your day to day. It's not a once a year thing.
That's right. So this career paths, career ladders. I worked for a company some years ago. We had done, it was instigated by the people team, HR team, but we all did it. And we had, pathing that showed, if you want to be an individual contributor, here's your path in this organization. If you want to be a manager in this organization, here's your path. And then here are paths for you for both of those in other organizations. So let's say, you want to be an individual contributor, but you're kind of interested in marketing and you're currently in a technical role. And so what was great about the diagram that we had is it really let people get out of this, oh my God, I have one option, and that's to be the manager of people like me. And so I agree. I think you typically find that in larger organizations, but it's worth doing. And then, the performance review thing, I am a huge fan of, and this again is something that some managers, they want to lead people, but they don't want to do this work, which is you schedule a one-on-one, happens at a cadence. You never cancel it, even if you don't have anything to talk about, because it's always connect. And that one-on-one has a template that you follow where, I say, here's what I'm noticing you did really well since our last talk. Here's what I'm noticing are some challenges. Tell me what you think I did well in support of you. And if you do that, you get to the performance review, it's just a summary of those conversations. And I think, though, there are a number of managers I don't have time for one-on-ones, or, we're going to get together to shoot the breeze about the weekend. Yeah, then doing a performance review is going to feel like a lot of work, So, you can make it a lot easier on yourself if you manage people more regularly instead of waiting for the end of the year.
Absolutely. Let's talk for a minute about, I know we've touched on this, but what are some of the roadblocks that exist for people in leadership roles? What are some of the challenges that you've seen with leaders and things that are things to watch out for, maybe things to avoid?
Yeah, well, so I work with a lot of high growth companies. They're earlier stage, high growth. And one of the challenges is that you have the people who've been there since the beginning, right? Or people that have been there for a while. And so you go, well, Sam is, he's a great athlete. He's a utility player. Let's have him run our new we know we need a tech support organization. Let's have Sam do it, right? And Sam, digs in and learns everything he can and builds a support organization. At some point, what you need is somebody who actually knows and has experience running, a high volume tech support organization. That's not Sam. He can't like make that experience happen. And so the roadblocks are understanding when it's like you need somebody who's a utility player and kind of can figure it out versus someone who actually has experience. And if that person who can figure it out doesn't have the experience, you need to be open to giving them that help. And there's no shame in it, right? I mean, poor Sam is probably like a killer engineer or something, but does he understand what the KPIs for great support look like? Does he understand how to do call routing? All that? Of course not. So either you go, it doesn't mean Sam's bad, right? It just means that he's reached his level of incompetency in that role. And either you say, Sam, thank you so much for getting this started. We're going to move you to another role and we'll bring in somebody with experience, or we're going to partner you with somebody. And what I see very often is companies clinging to and individuals clinging to these roles longer than they should. And it, again, there's no shame in it. It's kind of impressive that somebody like Sam could do that at all. So that's what I see mostly in these high growth companies. You have people in roles that you put them in there, they agreed to do it because someone needed to do it.
Yeah.
Because they actually had the experience. That I think slows down growth for a number of companies.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've seen the very same thing in the technical space with high growth companies, particularly in the CTO role. That's a high level leadership role. And, in the beginning, you need a particular type of technical founder or CTO or whatever you want to call it, that's going to be very hands-on. That's going to do certain types of things. But as you scale and grow, there's different stages, and each of those stages really requires a different skill set. Right. And you can certainly, some people can certainly rise to the occasion, so to speak, and continue to grow with that. But you've got to partner them with someone who has the experience. They're not going to manifest it out of zero. They have to have somebody mentor them, come alongside them, and help them grow. Or you have to be willing to change players. And like you said,
right. And I would say, roughly half of the engagements that I'm involved in we have a leader who has been there since dirt because he's early in the company, but he or she has never done this job. And we need to help them get good at it, or help us and them decide if it's not the right job for them. And then that's a really common scenario, because that's what you do when you're starting a company. Everybody puts on a million hats and does things they've never done before, and then at some point it gets in the way.
Yes, absolutely. When I ran my own SaaS business, that's why I ended up shutting it down, because I was wearing too many hats. And the piece of the pie for me of the things that I didn't enjoy was way too big.
Big. Yeah. Good for you. Good for you. Life's too short.
Time to open source the software, provide the support for the people that use it, and move on to something else that I enjoy more.
That's right. I
had the privilege, like you said, not everybody has the privilege to make that choice.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation.
Agreed. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts on leadership and how, people can avoid the roadblocks or continue to grow and just be the best that they can be?
I would say the main thing, for leaders is just be honest with yourself. Be honest about things you enjoy doing, don't enjoy doing, and then, and then think about how you're going to do it all anyway, right? Is that you're just going to buckle down and be in that, like, I don't like it, but I'm doing it? Do I ask for help? Do I delegate to someone beneath me who sees it as a growth opportunity? But if the soft stuff isn't your thing, or the operational stuff isn't your thing, be honest with yourself. It doesn't mean you have to quit your job. It just means you have to think about, how do you still be effective at both, given that that's not who you are, right? Like, and we're all humans, right? We all have these these places where, like I can make dinner, but I will make dinner if we're really, really hungry. And my husband's like, but you have to have a way for dinner to happen either way.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, just as a reminder to our audience, we hope that you have enjoyed this. We hope that you've gotten some value out of it. We want to educate and provide value. And if at any time you need some additional help, need some additional resources from senior leaders, Diane operates in the customer service space as a senior leader there, and I operate in the product and engineering space, and we can help you with any of the things that we talked about today.